Hi, good morning. It's Jim from the Mavestar Observatory. I've got a couple of topics that I want to get into, which is, I dare say, going to put you on the edge of your chair, and I think you're going to get angry just like I do sometimes about those topics. But before I do, just want to say a big thank you to the few people that are supporting us, and just remind all the viewers that this is one of the hardest times for us at the observatory. During November, December and January we receive little support, and that's because mainly people are thinking about the Christmases and their families and that. But if you can just bear in mind, we've got a lot of expense for January. We've got a lot of equipment that's going out to Brazil and South Australia, and we can't do it without the support from you guys. So really, more than anything, we need to keep the support going and just keep things on track for January. Guys, you probably watch a lot of similar other YouTube channels like my own, and sometimes there is a bit of conflict information out there, but none worse than what's coming out from the government official bodies around the world with regards to CO2 taxations and stuff like that. They've literally raised trillions of pounds on this false belief that CO2 is driving our climate, and we've got the evidence now to probably even challenge them in a court of law. If we could get a fair crack of the whip, we would be able to do that, and I believe we would be able to set the record straight with regards to this. There's a lot of different facets that's going on here, guys. We've got people that work for these organisations like the European Space Agency, NASA, and all the other organisations that are to do with this. We've got peer-reviewed scientists that have had to be forced into writing statements to support CO2 and driving global warming and stuff like that. And unless we try and have that debate in a court of law, we're never going to change the way things are going at the moment. It's obvious why politicians want to push it. It's an amazing way of raising trillions and trillions of pounds globally, but it is affecting ourselves, the taxpayers, because we're the one now paying the bills for CO2, and it is also damaging industry because they're having to change the policies to meet new guidelines. We need to at least challenge the governments, and I know why one person's not going to do it on their own, because we're going to go up, if that's the case, against government barristers and lawyers and maybe even judges, and we stand to lose everything. That's why one person isn't going to do it. So if we can first of all agree on a certain few things on YouTube channels, like we all start singing at least from the same hymn book. We're not going to come across as crazies. We're going to not only educate people that watch our videos, but we're going to inform them correctly. And to do that, what we need to do is not do what the governments are doing, that's cherry pick data. I'm not going to mention any names, but there is a bit of that going on, and it's only what the government's doing. So I think it's just wrong to begin with. If you're going to do science, then you need to get your facts straight. If you genuinely make mistakes, then you've got to come forward and just admit it. At the end of the day, we're not superhumans. All human beings make mistakes, and if it's an oversight, then no one's going to hold it against you. But what we need to do is focus on the main aspects of what is going on, and we need to at some point challenge them. And to do that, it's got to be done in a court of law. And I've been speaking to a reporter in Australia today who agreed it would be a great way to progress forward with all this, because I was saying there is an enormous amount of evidence now that we could rebut the argument for CO2 causing global warming. And I think it's just time that a lot of us got together and probably made a few challenges with local authorities, or not local authorities, but main authorities within these countries, because if you can break one of them, then you'll break the rest. You'll break the link in the chain. If one of them gets beat in court over CO2 not being the driver of climate, then they have to end climate taxes, full stop, with regards to CO2 warming the climate. And if you can do it with one, you'll break the link in the chain, and they'll all have to follow suit, and we can stop this nonsense. And in turn, what will happen throughout these organisations is these people that are being pressured with the loss of the job, loss of the pension, loss of their livelihoods, it's nothing short of bullying within the organisations. It'll stop that as well, and we can get back to good science and giving science a good name. So why we're looking at the globe and the jet streams, it's, whilst I was talking to this reporter in Australia this morning, a good friend of mine, we was talking about the climate in Australia currently, and I said that is largely due to the fact that the jet stream is beneath the continent, and as a result of that, it's not bringing up that colder air, and in turn that's why they're not getting any precipitation over there. But if we look at the jet streams over America, we see it's the complete opposite. We've got that Arctic blast, and the reason for that is because over at the United States at the moment, the jet stream is very low, so that cool Arctic air is coming in, and you're getting a lot of flooding, a lot of snow, a lot of sub-zero temperatures, and that's just not the case for Australia because of the positions of the jet streams. And I've talked about the jet streams many times. We've lost the normal patterns of jet streams on the Earth. This has been accepted by a lot of climatologists that now say, yes, things are not the same as what there was 20 years ago. There's been some dramatic changes in the jet stream, and we seem to have lost the regular patterns of polar jet streams and subtropical, and we seem to have this very large jet stream that seems to be the only predominant one over the northern and southern hemispheres. Well, as a result of this, we are going to get temperatures increasing in some regions more than what we are others, and that's just a relationship to do with the jet streams and the positions of latitude on the Earth. If we look at Australia, you can see it is probably the hottest continent on the Earth at this very moment. If I just show you, the rest of the continents, you'll see that is the case. And I do understand that Australia is in the summer season at the moment, therefore the tilt of the Earth is favouring the sunlight covering the continent more than it does, but Australia, I think, and most Australians would agree that this is breaking records and setting precedents for some of the behaviours that farmers are having to resort to, like slaughtering their cattle. The grasslands are drying up, and there's a lot of fires breaking out. And speaking to this reporter, there's also a lot of substations exploding all along the coastline of the western parts of Australia. So it is largely down to the position of the jet stream, and as long as that jet stream stays where it is, then the warm, hot, humid drought conditions are going to continue to show themselves over most of the continent. And it's the same for the United States. Unless something changes with regards to the jet stream, that Arctic air is going to continually seep down over the United States and cause problems in the manner it is. Guys, this is likely down to one anomaly or two anomalies, and that could be largely down to cosmic radiation coming through our upper atmosphere and colliding with other particles in the air, and in turn creating a lot of muons on the ground. And we are now an observatory that monitors muons, and very shortly we'll have them in South America and South Australia, collecting radiation samples as well, background radiation as well as muon radiation, and also intensity of the magnetosphere in those regions. Because one is the South Atlantic anomaly, which is the weakest intensity on our planet, and the other is where the highest intensity is in Australia. And we can get an idea of what protection is in these vicinities, and that's why January is such a big important month, that we get all this equipment put together and sent out into the field to these regions, so we can see directly, and we will get a gauge straight away after a month of collecting data of what's going on with regards to protection in these both regions, because one is very strong, one is very weak, and we get an idea of what sort of protection you get in a very strong region of high intensity of magnetism and a very low. And we can directly relay that straight back to you guys. The other thing is that, as you know, we have got a lot of cosmic radiation inbound, creating clouds, and as a result, there's more precipitation over some regions and less over others, and it's directly affecting the jet streams. And it could have been directly affecting the jet streams for many, many years now. This could be the sole thing that does disrupt jet stream patterns. And, you know, all this is completely new science. You know, the European Union, Space Agency, set up an experiment which I don't think was done very fairly. I did mention it a couple of weeks ago in a video where they got this cloud experiment, but they only put 2 types of gases in there and expected it to cause water precipitation. Well, you know, we know our atmosphere consists of many different types of gas, and if you're not going to put the correct mix in an experiment, then you're going to end up with uncertainties in the experiment at the end of it. So, you know, I think it wasn't very fairly done, and therefore didn't show the results of which it should have. You know, this is the exact position we stand right now in science and in these organisations, and unless they go unchallenged, nothing is ever going to change, guys. You know, they're going to keep misinforming the public and, you know, supporting their cases for raising taxes around the world, and, you know, we're not going to move forward. We're not going to get no early warning systems as a result of this. You know, it's going to come down to independent observatories like this one here, you know, to inform people accurately based on the facts. And it does get very, very annoying, you know, when these organisations are going completely unchecked. Nobody's challenging them. It's like, you know, the world would rather pull the duvet over themselves and keep themselves warm as opposed to expose themselves to a little bit of uncomfort and sort the mess out. You know, a drug addict is never going to cure themselves if they think the way to cure themselves is taking more drugs. Or the alcoholic is going to drink more alcohol and believe he's going to resolve himself, you know, clear himself of his, you know, his addictions. The only way to address these issues is by challenging them and stopping them. And, you know, unless we all start to come together to do that, nothing's going to change. And if nothing changes, then we're going to be put in harm's way as a result of that. And we know that we've got some real psychopaths, I don't have to mention names, that are informing world leaders and politicians. And these are the sorts of people that say, look, if we can't control them by forms of media, then we'll control them with one of the things that they need, and that is food. And, you know, you probably know who I'm talking about, guys. But when are we going to get to a point where we're going to address these issues? It's all right talking about the causes and the effects of these things, but when are we going to address them? You know, when are we going to put our governments, who are supposed to work for us, back in line? That's the main thing. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we've got all the evidence we need to challenge any scientific organisation with regards to what is driving climate on this planet and win that case in court. It just needs people to get together, to put the case together and challenge the government. Until we do that, nothing's going to change, guys. And that's a sad case. You know, we can all look after ourselves and think, you know, stuff everybody else, but eventually it comes back to ourselves. It comes back to our own front door, and that is through a lack of acting at the time when we should have. Well, I could state many cases in our history where, through the lack of people acting, it has led to the deaths of millions of people needlessly. It shouldn't have happened. But, you know, unless we challenge these people, nothing will ever change. And you'll only have little organisations, well, it's not even an organisation, little observatories independently funded like this one here, you know, that are prepared to do that. And we can only do that as long as we get a bit of funding as well, guys. And we can't afford to be let down over, a period of time where, you know, these governments are driving you to spend your money on things such as Christmas. They start 2 months before, and then they want you going back into Black Fridays, you name it, just to waste your hard-earned money. You know, what we need at this time is a little bit of support, and maybe we can put together, you know, some peer pressure group on these organisations, and maybe put ourselves in a situation where we can challenge the government and address this argument once and for all with regards to CO2 and climate. Guys, it is very frustrating, the times we live in, and it needs more people to be proactive than, just talk. We need to stick and work together. It's the only way. People in numbers do, win eventually. I mean, people believed that by pressuring the government in the early years of the hydrogen bomb testing, that they would be able to stop the government testing further hydrogen bombs, and they were successful in doing that. That's what we need to get back, people that are prepared to protest and argue. When we know a wrong's been done, we know that we should, argue it. Anyhow, guys, I'm going to leave it here with you. If you want to help us here at the observatory, the links are down there. It's entirely up to you. It's not mandatory, but without funding, we're not a group-funded observatory. Simple as that. So, have a good day, and I'll catch up with you in the week some point. As always, bye for now.